therefore, all it can do is willingly place itself inside a vicious circle. It keeps getting more and more hostile, more and more lethal, bombing and killing and destroying until it is forced to stop.
And what is going to force it to stop, you think?
I think that we are witnessing, even as we speak, a divergence of interests between the United States and Israel. I think there was a brief convergence that was almost mystical in how it happened between Trump, who needed a break, a win, and a distraction from his domestic troubles, and Netanyahu, who needed a similar thing, but mostly needed a win to ensure his political future. But after less than 2 days, it is already very clear that Trump's attention span and general strategic outlook is not geared towards a lengthy war, whereas Netanyahu wants exactly what he wanted in Gaza, a forever war. Trump is not, I think, willing to endure a forever war. He is already stating directly that he wants to talk to the Iranians, that there's an offer on the table, that the operation is proceeding quicker than planned. This is not music to Israel's ears. Israel is saying that this is a profound operation, a lengthy operation. The prime minister and military commanders are ensuring the public that they're just going to have to get used to it because this will take as long as it takes. This stands in stark contradiction to what we hear from Washington. And I believe that this divergence of interests will stop these hostilities sooner rather than later.
Interesting to talk to you as always, Ori. Thank you so much for joining us on Al Jazeera. Ori Goldberg, an Israeli political commentator, live there from Tel Aviv.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Iran continues to strike U.S. assets across the Gulf, targeting several military bases. Smoke was seen in the industrial area in Qatar's capital, Doha. Strikes also hit Bahrain, Jordan, Oman, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Attacks have been reported on airports, residential buildings, and hotels. Shelter-in-place alerts have been issued to citizens across the region. Plumes of smoke were seen coming from one of Dubai's main commercial ports. Bloomberg has reported that logistics company DP World has suspended operations at Jebel Ali port. Elsewhere, 2 Iranian drones targeting Al Salam military base in Abu Dhabi were dealt with, according to the Defense Ministry. The UAE says at least 3 people have been killed, and it has intercepted more than 500 missiles and drones. Here in Qatar, the Ministry of Defense has announced that jet fighters are being used to intercept incoming missiles from Iran. In a statement, the ministry said Qatar's armed forces jets have successfully defended against air attacks involving drones. It says cruise missiles launched by Iran have also been intercepted. Let's go live to Zain Basravi for the latest. He's here in Doha. Bring us up to speed with what's been happening here first in Qatar. Zain.
Well, that announcement by the defense ministry with regards to the use of its jets to take on the missiles and drones coming in from Iran is significant for one very clear reason. It is to try to create a cordon to try to get away from letting those threats come towards the land area of Qatar. The defensive Patriot missiles they've been using to try to take down these threats have resulted in debris fall, which has caused damage over the course of the last 2 days. Specifically, the industrial area fire that we saw earlier today with that large plume of smoke rising above the city. Now, what the Qatar Ministry of Defense has said is that the use of the jets has allowed them to take the fight to those threats over the waters in the Gulf, outside of the land borders of Qatar. And that is something they say has helped them to deal with those threats before they're able to come close to the mainland, and that's why they've said that the sounds of the explosions of those interceptions seem to be getting farther. And it has to be said, over the course of this evening, we haven't seen or heard as many of those explosions as we saw yesterday on the first day of this war.
And what's been the impact of the Iranian attacks on the rest of the region, Zain?
Well, there's been a number of incidents. The second day of this conflict started much like the first, where we saw a number of GCC cities coming under attack. In the last few hours, Bahrain once again saying that sirens were sounding. It was expecting more strikes there. The UAE has shut down its embassy in Tehran and pulled out all of its mission staff, specifically citing what it described as the endangerment of innocent civilians in dangerous and irresponsible escalation and flagrant violations of national sovereignty. That's how it described Iran's strikes on Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Sharjah. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs went on to say that continued aggressive and provocative behavior undermines the opportunity for de-escalation. All the Gulf states right now are calling for de-escalation. Saudi Arabia, following the attacks on a U.S. base there, following the ongoing targeting of GCC cities, has said that it reserves the right to retaliate. And this is something that is quite serious. If Saudi Arabia is to enter the conflict in any way, that may spawn other GCC countries to enter the conflict, and that would represent a serious escalation in what we are already seeing as a massive retaliation by Iran across the region. It has to be said, in the last 10 or 20 years, the Iranians, as well as the Arab states, have spent a great deal of political capital to warm the relations between them, to thaw disagreements, and to build better political ties. And what we're seeing in the last 2 days is that political capital being squandered, and the concern is that they won't be walking back to rebuilding political relationships if this conflict carries on much longer.
Okay, thank you very much, Zain, for bringing us the latest there from Doha. Zain Bazravi. Let's discuss all this further now with our senior political analyst, Marwan Bashara, who's here in Doha. Marwan, let's pick up where we left off with Zain and what's been happening in this region. The Gulf states caught in this crisis.
De-escalations could, best case scenarios have the generals speak to each other about how exactly to reach a ceasefire, for example. But that's not negotiations, because if it is along the lines of what apparently those in Israel, but notably those in the United States, thought that, we don't like the people we negotiate with, so, go ahead, kill them and bring new negotiating team. That does not work, not with a country like Iran. It changed 6, 7 presidents since the revolution, 7 presidents at least since the revolution. But the overall, discourse and approach by this Islamic Republic has been quite similar, throughout, and it just basically emphasizes its sovereignty and insists on whatever the dealings with the United States to be based on mutual interest and mutual respect. And that has not changed for the past 47 years. And I would bet that even after a devastating war like this one, I don't think they're going to change that discourse.
And what's also not changed, Marwan, in Iran is a system. It's still in place despite the assassination of the supreme leader. We have a new leadership, but it's still the same system. What do you see as the priorities for this leadership now on the home front first?
Well, you see, I think this gamble, is quite reckless, quite dangerous, quite tragic, because we've seen it, play out before in the likes of Libya. We've seen it play out before in the likes of Iraq in the early 1990s after the first Gulf War, when at the time Bush Sr. told the Iraqis to rise against Saddam Hussein, and we've seen Saddam Hussein kill countless number of them. We've seen that happen in Libya, and we've seen the chaos that happened afterwards. So just to attack a country, decapitate its leadership, and then tell people to rise, that does not bring democracy and prosperity to any country. That just brings chaos and, worst case scenario, civil war. And civil wars are not good. And we've seen what they could do in the Middle East. We've seen them in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, and so on and so forth. So this is quite irresponsible, on the part of the United States. You would expect that from the likes of Netanyahu, because for Netanyahu, it's either, the Shah's son, who's now a new made Zionist who visits Israel trigger happy during genocide, or a total breakdown and chaos within Iran. That's for Netanyahu. But for a country like the United States that has long-term interest, that is expected to act more responsibly, if you will, in the region, that has allies like Gulf states and others, to act in a way whereby it has end game that is well defined, that if it does get involved in a war, it shouldn't be about gangsterism, it shouldn't be mafiosi, it shouldn't be about killing some bunch of people in order to replace them with other people. It shouldn't be able to open the gates of hell on a country and tell people to rise so that they can be massacred, in countless numbers. We've seen just what one demonstration, during a protest movement only several weeks ago that led to the death of thousands. So this is not something that you can play with. This is not something that you can gamble on. And I think in that way, this has been quite irresponsible and reckless. And as you said, the system remains in place. I would expect it to remain in place, even if it's weakened. And when it is weakened, again, we know from lessons of history that it turns against its people and it becomes even bloodier than before.
Yeah, a weakened system can be a very dangerous one, no doubt. Thank you very much, Marwan. Always good to get your analysis. Marwan Bashara is our senior political analyst. All right, let's get an update now from our correspondents on the ground. Mohammed Val is in Tehran, Kimberly Halkett in Washington, D.C., Noor O'Day is in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, and that's where we begin. Noor, I understand there's been more attacks on central Israel.
Yes, new warnings and sirens going off in the Tel Aviv area, in Jerusalem, and also in southern Israel and across the southern occupied West Bank in the illegal Israeli settlements. We have reports of one direct impact in the Tel Aviv area. There are still very scanty details about